Saltwater Orchard, Chapter 19, Richard. So, tell me about Eric. Richard took a sip of his drink and waited. While he wanted to know more about Ryan's background, he wasn't sure how many details he wanted to hear. He didn't need to be jealous of her late husband. He set his glass back down, careful not to bang it. There's not a lot to tell. She shrugged her shoulders. He's been gone longer than he was in my life. They'd spent most of the meal talking about various designs for the barn, finally settling on her original vision. It would now all depend on building codes and contractors. He just needed to make sure the renovations were done and the venue was turning a profit, along with the farm, by his uncle's deadline. Where did you meet him? He asked. If her heart was still attached to her deceased husband, then this relationship was doomed before it ever started, and he really wanted to see where it might lead. We met at a beach party. Richard raised an eyebrow at her. You don't strike me as the party type. I'll take that as a compliment, I think. She smiled at him. Go on, he smiled back in encouragement. It was a few years after I graduated high school. I was working to save money for college. Eric was a couple of years older, and from Haven, too. I knew who he was, but we never really walked in the same circles. When he showed up that night, I was just instantly taken, and for some reason, I caught his eye as well. I can understand that. He winked at her before taking a sip of his water. There was something about her that made him want to dive headfirst into a new relationship. With her. Anyway, we hit it off and started dating, and before I knew it, we were engaged and then married. All within a year. Ryan twirled a piece of her hair around her finger as she talked. Seems awfully fast. Richard usually analyzed and came at the situation from every angle. Now, ever since he'd stumbled on her and her daughter in his barn that fateful night, he was moving faster than ever before. She continued with her story. It was, but Eric was in the military. He was home on extended leave after a deployment. His unit had already been deployed overseas once, and rumor had it they were going to be called up again. Sure enough, shortly after he proposed, he got his new orders. We eloped to the courthouse the same day. That must have been tough. It was. It was even tougher when I found out a week after he'd left that I was pregnant with Erica. A month after that, I received the notification he'd been killed in action. She stopped, swallowing hard. Sorry. Sometimes it still hits me how much Erica and I lost when Eric died. I'm sorry. So Eric never met his daughter? No. I had one call with him during that time, and he knew I was expecting, but nothing else. He didn't even know he was going to have a daughter. How long were you married? Just 6 months, but we only lived together for about 3 weeks. Richard didn't know what to say. He knew people had been married for shorter periods of time. He seemed to recall a celebrity or two being married for mere hours. Ryan's marriage had been long enough to create a child, but now she'd been a widow far longer than she'd been married. It must be hard to raise Erica alone. At first I had support. My parents were still here, and they helped when she was a baby so I could work. But then they died too when Erica was around 4 years old. My dad was in a terrible car accident on the way home from work one day. 6 months later, my mom died from pancreatic cancer. She went quick. He reached across the table and took her hand, squeezing it. I'm sorry. You've had a lot of loss in your life. Yeah, she gave a shaky laugh. Just makes me stronger, I guess. She shrugged a shoulder. But we do okay. Which is why you were living in my barn when we first met. He smiled and squeezed her hand again. Well, we were still doing okay. Not great, but okay. Smiling, she slipped her hand out from under his to take another sip from her water glass, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. He already missed the touch of her hand, but he didn't want to push things. He had wonderful memories of playing in the orchard with the younger, carefree version of Ryan, but he liked this adult version of her even more. Curious, he continued his questions. Why on earth were you in my barn? In a word, Stan. Who's Stan? Do I need to go talk with Stan? Maybe beat him up? He tried to give her a mean look, like he could hold his own against whoever this Stan was. He would certainly try for her. She laughed, which was the reaction he had been hoping for. No, you don't have to beat up Stan. He's just a creepy middle-aged man who thinks harassing a woman with a child and no wedding ring is fun. He was my landlord, and he made up some petty lies to get me out. I was tired of dealing with him, so I left. But why in my barn? Why didn't you just go rent another place? Spoken by a man who's never had to worry about money. Ryan ducked her head as a flush stained her cheeks. Not true. I was comfortable growing up, and I'm comfortable now, but I'm not rich. She said nothing as she raised an eyebrow at him. Come on, don't you remember the clothes I used to wear when we were kids? All the holes in them? Wasn't that the fashion? She smiled at him, and Richard felt his heart speed up just a little. Ha ha. But why my barn? Why? Are you kicking me out too? What? Of course not. I love having you at the farm with me. He stopped once he saw the smile broadening on her face. The waiter arrived to clear the table and leave the bill. It's nothing nefarious, I promise you that. Diabetes is expensive. I had a nest egg saved, but after Erica's diagnosis, most of it was gone. Between her initial hospitalization and all her supplies, it's eaten up my savings fast. I'm still paying off her hospital bill. I just don't have a lot of margin in my budget. I'm sorry. You can stay at the farm as long as you'd like. I enjoy having the two of you there. I appreciate the offer, but I've started looking. Once the project is done, I'll have something lined up, I'm sure. Richard reached for his wallet and placed his credit card on the bill for the waiter. He knew having Ryan and Erica on the farm felt right. It felt, well, it felt more like a home. And since he had called for honesty earlier, he would be honest with himself. He really hoped he'd get another chance at kissing her tonight, especially after Erica had interrupted them the first time. As soon as the waiter returned his card and he signed the slip, he stood and helped Ryan to her feet. Tucking her arm under his, he pulled her close to his side as he escorted her from the restaurant. His mind was already whirring as he came up with ideas about how to get her out on another date and where they could go. He just wasn't sure she'd agree again. He knew how hard it was for her to leave her daughter with someone. Richard's feelings were deeper for the woman walking beside him than they'd ever been for Sloane. His relationship with her had been superficial. Tonight he'd told Ryan more about his past than he'd ever told anyone else. It's still early, he said. Can I talk you into some dessert? Sweet Scoops is still open. I promised Erica I'd pick her up before bedtime. I don't want Abigail to think I'm taking advantage of her. Besides, I'm still pretty full from dinner. Maybe another time? He hoped he hid his disappointment. Sure. How about tomorrow night? We can even bring Erica. He would have to capitalize on his opportunity tonight if he was going to have a chance of kissing Ryan without an audience. He knew just the place. Do we have time for a quick stop before we pick her up? I thought I'd go back out to get her after we got home. That doesn't make sense. Abigail's house is on the way. We can swing in and pick her up and go home together. Gosh, he was falling harder and faster than he thought for this woman because just the word home had created a vision he would have a hard time getting out of his head. Him coming in from a long day working in the orchard, her putting supper on the table, and Erica running to throw herself into his arms as she yelled, "Yay, Daddy's home!" Pushing the thoughts away, he tried again. It won't take long. Do you trust me? Of course. Lead on then, good sir. Ryan laughed. The sound penetrated deep into his heart. He could spend a lifetime making her laugh. They fell silent as he drove back towards Haven. He spent the time planning the next few steps in his head. He wanted it to be perfect. He wanted to show her how much she meant to him. Slowing, he pulled onto a grass track that slowly climbed to the top of a hill. Parking, he jumped out and ran around to hold her door for her. Where are we? Patience. Richard held out his hand. She hesitated only a moment before taking it and stepping out after him. It didn't seem like she remembered the place, but he'd never forgotten. It was the spot where, almost 15 years ago, he had tried kissing her. They'd both been awkward teenagers. Well, he had certainly been awkward. He didn't think she'd ever been. Keeping a firm hold of her hand, he walked up the path to the top of the hill. The full moon out tonight gave them plenty of light to see where they were going. The short walk was worth it. At the top, the town of Haven lay before them. Lights blinked back at them from the houses. He looked up at the stars filling the sky. The pulsing beacon from Haven Light swept across the view as it rotated. Richard pulled Ryan around to stand in front of him with her back against him. He wrapped his arms around her shoulders, pulling her gently to him. What do you think? I love this spot. I always have. But I got so busy with life, I'd forgotten about it until just now. Do you remember anything else about this spot? He wasn't sure why he'd asked the question. She probably hadn't given him a second thought in years. She'd married and had a child while he'd gone off and started a life. A life he was realizing he no longer wanted. Turning in his arms, she looked up at him. She reached a hand up and let her fingers lay at the back of his neck, tangling in his hair. He swallowed hard as he gazed into her eyes. In the darkness, the moon provided just enough light for him to see her eyes, a slight smile on her lips, the lips he wanted to kiss. He swallowed hard once more, shuffling his feet. He was being transported back to that time of being an awkward teenager. Maybe this had been a bad idea. I remember you tried to kiss me here when we were teenagers, Richard Mosley, but we were both too scared to make it happen. Do you want to fix that? Ryan tightened her fingers in his hair and pulled him towards her. More than anything, he murmured, just before their lips met. Try to interrupt this, Erica, he thought. He drew her closer, his lips angling to meet hers. He knew he should hold back. He didn't want to scare her away, but he wasn't sure he could stop himself from deepening the kiss. The sound of a phone ringing broke the night silence. Ryan drew back. He murmured, "Ignore it," as he began pulling her lips closer. He needed more. "I can't. It might be Erica." Sighing, he let her step away. Erica had interrupted them after all. He already felt the loss of Ryan from his arms. Chapter 20. Ryan. Grunting, Ryan started dragging the old recliner from the living room toward the front door. "Come on, Erica, help me. Give it a push." Her daughter came running and shoved the recliner hard. Ryan tried to stay focused on getting the last of the things out of the main floor, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the kiss with Richard, the one she'd even started. The first man to show her interest had made her forget her promise not to date. Pathetic. Well, that wasn't entirely true. There had been other men over the years, but they'd been easy to rebuff. None of them had captured her interest like Richard. She felt safe with him. She was eager to see him again, maybe even get another kiss. She held back the sigh, trying to escape. All it took was one toe-curling kiss, and she tossed her vow out the window. She needed to remember that her daughter came first, always. She wrestled the oversized armchair through the doorway. She needed to get it across the yard to the dumpster. Erica was trying to help, but there was only so much a 7-year-old could do without becoming more of a hindrance than a help. "Thanks, sweetie. We'll leave it here. Richard can help me get it in the dumpster later. You've been a good helper today. If you want to go read for a bit, I can do the rest." "Thanks, Mommy." The little girl wrapped her arms around Ryan's waist and squeezed before running off. She could hear her feet pounding up the stairs as she headed to her room to get her newest book. The dumpster was already half filled with broken furniture, old boxes of tax returns, and other miscellaneous papers. She had even tossed out a shoebox filled with receipts for prescriptions filled over 10 years ago. All these weeks later, she was still finding stuff in odd places. Random things like empty pill bottles with the labels removed, or piles of used soap stuffed in old mason jars. The first floor was almost empty enough to start the next step of the renovations. Tonight, she and Erica would start removing the wallpaper from the dining room walls. It was circa 1970s avocado green and harvest gold. She couldn't wait to remove it and start painting. Her stomach flipped at just the thought of seeing Richard when he got home. He'd gone to get supplies for them over in Ellsworth. She'd given him a long list of things to pick up. Pushing thoughts away about how she could get another kiss from him tonight once her daughter was in bed, she turned back to the task at hand. She needed to finish emptying the room so they could start ripping down the wallpaper. "Where did you go with Richard last night? Can I come next time?" Erica stood in the doorway to the living room, waiting for her to answer. "I thought you were upstairs reading." "I didn't have much left. I finished it and wanted a snack. So, where did you go?" "I told you we went to dinner in Ellsworth. And yes, you're coming with us the next time we go. I told you that, too." She ran a hand down her daughter's hair. "Why all the questions?" "I just don't want you to forget to take me next time." The little girl shrugged and smiled. Ryan shook her head. "I promise I won't forget you. Do you want to help me move the couch?" "Sure. Then can I have a snack?" "Yes, then you can have a snack." She stood, hands on her hips, eyeing the couch that remained. She hefted one end, trying to judge if she would be able to get it outside on her own. She pulled the cushions up and discovered it was a convertible sofa. Holding back a groan, she thought for a minute. Then she said, "Erica, run and grab me the small rugs by the back door." Her daughter took off running and was soon back with the 2 area rugs. "Okay, I'm going to lift this end of the couch." She pointed to one end. "When I do, I want you to put one rug under each leg of the couch." The little girl nodded and knelt beside the couch. Ryan leaned down and squatted, getting her hands under the edge. "I'm going to count to 3. On 3, scoot in there and get that rug placed nice and flat, as quick as you can. Ready?" "Ready!" "Okay. 1, 2, 3. With a grunt, Ryan lifted the couch. Erica scooted closer and slid a rug under the legs. "Hurry, honey. This couch is heavy." "Almost done." With one last pat, she scooted back and Ryan let the couch down with a thud. "Okay, the other side." Stepping back, she wiped her brow with the back of her hand. She wasn't sure her idea of pushing the couch outside was going to work, but she was still going to try. She wanted to be sure she was doing all she could to hold up her end of the bargain. Caught by a sudden movement outside, she turned to the window. As she approached, she saw an unfamiliar car pulling into the driveway. She stood still, watching to see who would step out. She wasn't in the mood for visitors, especially not covered in dirt with her hair a mess. She hoped it was just a lost tourist who needed directions. A woman wearing a tailored pair of pants and a flowing blouse stepped out and closed the door to a fancy car. She didn't know what model it was, but there were 3 little circles on the front grille. It was definitely not something she could afford. "Hang on a second, honey. Someone's here. I'm going to see what they want. I'll be back in a minute." "Okay. I'm going to go get my snack." Without waiting for a response, Erica scurried through the door to the kitchen. Ryan heard cupboards banging as she headed out the open front door. Stopping at the top of the porch steps, she called out, "Can I help you?" Pushing a pair of sunglasses to the top of her head, the woman stepped to the front of the car. "Who are you? Where's Richard?" "He's not here. Can I help you?" Ryan asked again, not liking the other woman's sharp tone. But she'd dealt with worse at the cafe, especially during the tourist season. "You didn't answer me. Who are you?" Ignoring the question, she simply said again, "Richard went to get supplies. He'll be back in about an hour. I can tell him you stopped by if you tell me your name." She fought the urge to snatch the bandana off her head and wipe her face. She was sure she had streaks of dirt on it. Compared to the woman in front of her, she must look like a vagabond. Oh, wait, she was a vagabond, one who was living here only because of the good graces of a good man. "I'm Sloane, his girlfriend. Don't make me ask again. Who are you?" The other woman wrinkled her nose as she turned to look around the farm. "Can't believe he's living here now." Ryan's stomach dropped. He had a girlfriend, and he'd said nothing. He had acted as if he was single, and she had kissed him. This is why she needed to hold on to her promise to herself. She wouldn't break Erica's heart over and over by men leaving, or by men lying. Without thinking, she answered the question. "I'm Ryan. I live here too." The woman turned slowly to look at her. "You live here?" Her voice rose, incredulous. "I do, with my daughter." She opened her mouth to further explain the situation, but before she could, Sloane snapped, "We'll see about that." The woman was in her car before Ryan could utter another word. She took a left out of the driveway. She wondered how long it would take the woman to realize she was going in the opposite direction from town. "Who is that, Mommy?" "Someone looking for Richard." "There he is! I found him first!" Erica jumped off the steps so she could run to meet him. He was turning into the driveway in a rented truck. Boards stuck out the back. "Hold on. Let him park before you go running towards him, sweetie. It's not safe to run toward a moving vehicle, remember?" The little girl bounced on her toes, waving her arms over her head. Ryan wanted to smile, but she knew she would have to tell him they were leaving. She couldn't stay here. She didn't want her daughter to get more attached to him than she already was. It was time to move on, even though she hadn't finished her part of the bargain. "You've been busy." Richard nodded at the dumpster. "Hey, kiddo." He ruffled Erica's hair. The little girl grabbed his hand and skipped alongside him as he walked towards where Ryan was standing on the porch. Her heart picked up speed as she saw him smile. Better to start with important things first. "Your girlfriend was here looking for you. You just missed her, but she went that way." She pointed in the opposite direction from where he'd come. "If you leave now, you can probably catch up with her." Crossing her arms, she waited. He stopped in mid-stride as confusion crossed his face. "What are you talking about? I don't have a girlfriend." "She said her name was Sloane. She was driving some fancy car and wearing fancy clothes, looking for you on an apple farm in the middle of nowhere, Maine." She raised an eyebrow at him, even as she tried to push down the hot jealousy rising up. He narrowed his eyes as he looked towards the road. "Did she say what she wanted?" "She didn't, but she seemed upset to find me here." "I bet she did." He ran his free hand through his hair. "I'll be out of here tomorrow. I'm sure someone at the cafe can find me a place in a heartbeat." She turned to go back inside. "We're leaving, Mommy? But I don't want to leave." Erica stomped a foot. "I want to stay with Mr. Richard." "Erica, that's enough." She gritted through her teeth. "Go inside." The little girl obeyed, even though she slammed the door behind her. She took a deep breath. She needed to get her own anger under control before she dealt with her daughter. She turned to go inside, even as she heard him running up the steps behind her. Wait, Sloane isn't my girlfriend. He stepped forward, grabbing her elbow to turn her to face him. Don't go. I want you to stay. She doesn't seem to know that. Did you tell her? She arched an eyebrow at him. She broke up with me before I came to Haven. She hasn't contacted me since I left Portland. Besides, I'm not dating Sloane. I'm dating you. At least, I thought I was. She closed her eyes as she let him draw her closer. She sighed as his arms wrapped around her and held her tight. Could she trust him? This felt so good, and she wanted him in her life. She just prayed she wasn't setting herself up for heartbreak, or Erica either. The last thing she wanted was her daughter's heart broken, or her own.